Hi, good morning, everyone. It's now 10 a.m. by my watch, so let's get things off to a start.
Let's make sure we have our main speakers online. Hi, Brent.
Morning. Stephen Lee, good morning.
Hey, morning.
Hi, Beppo. Hi, guys. Hi, Steve. Morning, guys. Morning.
Morning, everyone.
So I just want to welcome everyone to this first in a series of webinars being planned by CaribNOG and the American Registry for Internet Numbers, ARIN. It's really good to see you all online. I know we've had a very interesting past few weeks. And over those past few weeks, the COVID-19 or coronavirus pandemic has essentially disrupted economies and societies in an unprecedented manner. And I think that would have touched all of us as network operators and network administrators. And the CaribNOG core team got together and started to consider ways in which we can help the community to treat with the impact and downstream consequences of all of the border shutdowns, the school and business closures, the emergency orders and shelter-in-place orders that have pushed literally hundreds of thousands of persons across the region out of their offices and familiar places of work and into their homes. It's also put a whole new spotlight on ICT, or information and communications technology generally, and ICT infrastructure and internet infrastructure specifically. And that's why this collaboration between ARIN, CaribNOG, and the other internet organizations that have a footprint in the region, such as the Latin American and the Caribbean Internet Registry, LACNIC, the Internet Society, ISOC, and the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. That's why the group has gotten together to look at ways in which we can structure a meaningful response that provides practical tools, guidance, and information to the CaribNOG community and beyond. We also felt that it would be an excellent opportunity for us to fulfill the CaribNOG mandate to share ideas, experiences, and knowledge in a way that furthers and advances the internet in the Caribbean region. And so this first webinar is the expression of that. And what we want to look at in the series generally will be four main issues. And I just wanted to make everyone aware of the fact that this is a series. This is not a one-off event. We'll be looking specifically at the impact of COVID-19 and the Caribbean internet, trying to get an understanding of what is going on across the region and what different network administrators are doing and what different internet exchange point coordinators are doing to improve bandwidth, to improve the delivery of services, to strengthen and secure our networks. And so we've broken the series into four big blocks, and we will be dealing with the first of that in today's webinar. The four blocks are the internet and the network infrastructure. And in this area, we'll be looking at the importance and the practicality now of network autonomy, having autonomous networks, getting more autonomous system numbers, or ASNs, in the region, looking at accelerating the deployment of IPv6 to expand and extend the networks that are now being pressured to change overnight. We'll also be looking under the internet and networking infrastructure component at local traffic pairing, the new and more crucial role of domestic traffic exchange and domestic internet exchange points, content caching, BGP peering, and the like. We'll also be examining cloud service configurations. I know several persons have already been asking questions about how to deploy Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and other cloud solutions. And several of you have been experimenting more robustly with developing local cloud solutions, putting infrastructure in place within the territories that will allow for faster, cheaper, and more reliable delivery of local traffic and local applications and services. So in that internet and networking infrastructure, we'll cover all of these things. We'll also, of course, be looking at network security, DNS routing security, remote access, VPN tuning and scaling techniques, and multi-factor authentication. All of these things that have been put on as a spotlight. Even the tool that we're using today, Zoom, has come under increased scrutiny for its security policies, and a number of organizations are using Zoom. And we want to help with the the strengthening of all of these video conferencing platforms and remote work platforms that are out there. And then the last two areas will be internet and network access policy that goes alongside the technology. And the most interesting component for me is our how-to applications, techniques, and best practices segment. Every single one of these webinars will include a component that deals with practical tools and techniques and approaches to securing, managing, and administering networks in the region. So that's a series, and that's what we'll be addressing on a weekly basis from the CaribNOG members, speaking from the experiences of those in the community who are building out, managing, and operating their networks inside of this pandemic. And we will be exploring today in our inaugural webinar the issue of managing virtual offices and remote workers, business continuity support and consideration for network operators. The speakers for today's webinar will be Stephen Lee, the program coordinator for CaribNOG and the CEO of Architects Inc., a Miami, Trinidad and Tobago based internet solutions provider. And we also have Brent McIntosh, the coordinator of the Grenada Internet Exchange Point, the GREX. And these two gentlemen will be walking us through the practical considerations for administering remote work and the context in which that is now taking place in the region. So let me hand you over to the first speaker, who will give us a very brief overview of what is taking place in terms of remote work and Caribbean networks. Stephen.
All right, thank you, Bevel. Morning again to everyone. Good to see you. Glad to have everyone out. As Bevel indicated, the CaribNOG mandate is to share and to develop the technical community and the technical infrastructure in the Caribbean region, so that the entire region can benefit and move forward inside in the area of tech and support for business and community life. And so what we want to do today in our session today is look at just some of the immediate things that we're seeing and speak from a position of awareness of what business and civil society is dealing with as everyone is on the various states of lockdown. Significant part of this is the impact on business and commerce. And as we have as the title for today's, or the theme for today, managing virtual offices and remote workers, we want to look into that aspect, because this is one thing that people around the world, but certainly people inside of our region, are very concerned about right now. How to keep work going, how to keep life going, how to manage business when so many of us have to work remotely. And so I'm going to this part is going to be a 10-minute segment. Brent will elaborate on it in about a 15-minute slot, and then we'll have some Q&A. So I'm going to go very quickly over. Let me see if I can do a share. Yeah, I'm going to go very quickly over just some points to bring us into the considerations. All right, managing virtual offices and remote workers. So here's the view from the trenches. 5 things that are popping up, and this is from the perspective of, as Bevel said, I run a technology company. So this is coming directly from the questions that we've received and things that people have been asking over the last 2 months. So businesses are changing their process flows, and this is one of the first issues that people are starting to grapple with. We have to send a bunch of employees home. Can the business continue to run in the same way? Obviously, there are some that can't, but most of us from CaribNOG or who relate in the CaribNOG space would be in the field of technology workers, knowledge workers, or supporting those. Therefore, this would be our space in which we're dealing with businesses that do have the option of working using technology, internet, and so on. And so we have to help businesses to understand how to change the process flows. The big one, which is probably what I'm going to speak more about today, is new modes of accessing data and infrastructure. we're used to having the computer at the office and the data at the office. The data is not at homes or usually on personal devices. And so the questions that we've been getting is, how do I cause my operation to continue when we have to access our company data in a different way? Now that people are all basically home, there's a different kind of demand on the national and in fact global internet infrastructure. I'm currently on a AT&T fiber connection in Miami, and it has been a lot more unstable, a lot more impacted just over the last 4 weeks. And I'm sure that's because most of the people in my community are using it throughout the day, as I am. And we're seeing this over and over. We have been doing a lot more internet streaming of events, and we can see tangible impact on domestic internet infrastructure and on just how the internet is being used in general. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit more about as we go further into the webinar series, when we talk about network autonomy, domestic internet exchange, broadband infrastructure, IXPs, and so on. It's really to address this issue of being able to communicate within a nation or within a region in a way that we now need to, which we didn't to the same degree. New demand for technology infrastructure in homes. Lots of people use the work computer, but at home they have only the phone or only a tablet. And so how do companies resource that and cause the work to be able to continue? And then finally, there's the concern over security and performance management. Now that my employees are not here in front of me, how do I ensure that the company data remains secure? And how do I ensure that the work is taking place as expected? And these would not be, wouldn't be strange concerns to us. It's just that they're now a lot more acute given the situation that we're in, and the fact that across the world, lots of, or I'd say a majority of businesses and professionals are experiencing exactly the same situation. So what would have been a distributed and more mild concern in times past is now a very focused concern, and everybody is getting the same impact at the same time. So these are the questions which are coming up. I'm going to focus in on specifically the how to access my data, since this is basically top of mind for most of our businesses. This is a question that we get most often when people are dealing with that. So briefly on the access challenge. And there are two modes, or the conversations have been going in two directions. And this is not prescriptive. We're just sharing what we have observed and where the conversation has been going. Option one is to put our data in the cloud. And there are various modes of this, but the point is, can my data at the office, and this could be as simple as documents and spreadsheets, which would be the easiest case to deal with. Can we get that in a secure way in the cloud, that people who need to work on it together can actually keep working on it together? And it's probably one of the preferred options. It's certainly one of the options that can be leveraged fastest. People have businesses are considering Microsoft Office 365, Google, various cloud platforms that if I can get my data there, then we can enable secure access. And that's one of the things that we now start to talk through about, not just policies per se, but what kind of data can move there. The server, a particular application which runs on a database in the office, can we spin up an equivalent in one of the public cloud providers and then provision the same kind of access? We're not trying to solve the issue in this talk, but just more identifying that is the kind of question and consideration. Even if we are able to move the data to the cloud, Do I have sufficient licenses and subscriptions? And so we know that there's a cost to that. Thankfully, a lot of cloud providers in different ways for different services have been waiving costs or lowering costs or giving some amount of price breaks on the services, especially as it concerns education, because kids still need to go to school or have some level of training at home. So education and the remote workspace have benefited the most from price breaks. But there's invariably going to be some costs, especially if what we're trying to do is move a snapshot of a server into the cloud. Those are some of the things that would be the most expensive. The second one is well, let the data, let the infrastructure stay at the office, and let's just access it remotely. And so that's the second one that the conversation goes in the direction of, and it brings up considerations over the availability of core infrastructure at the office itself. For us to access this the office remotely, I would need to have some semblance of an ordered network at the office, preferably server, firewall, some gateway with access control. At this point, having a few laptops or computers strung together in an unordered network doesn't really help. And so the companies that are organizations that are best able to respond right now are ones with consolidated infrastructure. On top of that, we'd have to now add VPN access, and so, or whether Cisco or WatchGuard or any other of the firewall providers, getting those licenses, getting it turned on, and then having had access to the network, remote desktop infrastructure, which is another bugbear inside of there. Having either Windows remote desktop services or some software on each desktop or laptop in the office that can be accessed. These are things, again, that these are the conversations that we're going through, and we basically talk organizations through it based on the level of technical expertise that's there, the current state of the infrastructure, because with the lockdown, we can't go to do new network installs. And so the responses to it follow a range, and it depends on where each person's at and what can be tolerated. But these are the main concerns. I just note to two additional ones along that, not as major as this, but just the issue of real-time comms using either VoIP or video conferencing. This is a point in time that a lot of businesses have been asking, can I stand up a VoIP server? Which the answer, sometimes is yes, but also, do we have the lines at the office which you can call out? Because people want to be able to call out from their company's number, as opposed to having employees use cell phones or make WhatsApp calls and so on. So VoIP systems have sprung up once again into a lot of prominence, as well as video conferencing systems like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, and so on. Those now come back into the conversation as considerations. And so what we want to do, I'm going to turn over to Brent now, and he'll get into some of the more practical and how-to parts of it. But what we want to do before we end today is let's have some discussion and feedback around this, around some of these considerations and what you're seeing, and be able to share advice, share knowledge with each other around these.
Thanks, Stephen.
Feedback. And generally, feedback is not just on what Stephen said, but on the experience heading into it. Brent is going to deal with some specific
remote work technical issues in the how-to component of this webinar. But a big part of what we are hoping to have the CaribNOG community do is start framing and prioritizing the way forward for network operators and administrators. Of course, hearing from you helps us to tailor the material, not just for this webinar, but the subsequent webinars, and our sharing also helps us all to get a better sense of what we can do on our networks. Who's going to be first?
I'm sorry, this should be clearer now. Yeah, is it better now? Yes, I was saying let's get some feedback and let the sharing help us all get a good picture of what's happening, and not just commenting on Stephen's presentation, but on the general state as we prioritize the topics going forward and get the practical component of these webinars really tailored to the needs of the community. Dun, dun, dun.
Bevel,
Yep.
Claire Craig here.
Good morning.
Good morning, all. It's interesting to hear Stephen's perspective on the access challenge and the options. The thing is, though, in this season, people are trying to do everything very quickly. So they may not be considering that there are these options. And so they may be stuck in a paradigm. I mean, I know Brent is going to talk about some of the how-tos, but if you have been just doing things the way you've been normally doing it, how then do you decide at this point in time that, I mean, how do you step back and really consider the options that are possible to go forward? How do you encourage, I guess it's the executive team or whatever, that in a season like this, it cannot just be business as usual because things have changed, and therefore we may have been using, say, remote desktop for a long time, but this may be a time to quickly start to look at the option of cloud technology for taking the business forward.
Should I respond to that?
Yes,
Yeah.
Stephen.
All right. I mean, I guess it's a situation which you would have to encourage or press the view that we're in some unprecedented times right now. I think if we look inside of any particular organization's network, certain things will absolutely stop if we continue to do them as we have before. There are situations in which payroll needs to be processed and these kind of things. If there is no access to the network through one particular pathway, then I think we don't really have a choice to find some other. So I mean, I think we have to kind of encourage a realistic and pragmatic look at what's happening and what the options are, and basically try to lead the way into finding some suitable solution. And it might not be the most obvious or obvious thing on the deck, but a conversation around it can lead in that direction.
Good morning. Dion Codrington. I was having a conversation with my neighbor who's an educator, and there's an actual need for greater awareness for the public to be aware of how the schools, government schools especially, can truly transition into remotely providing support for teachers, kids, etc. Because not all schools, of course, would have been prepared for this type of crisis. And I'm thinking it would be highly beneficial in this type of web series if a focus can be on options for the education space, like this one day to focus on that, because of course the public is unaware. Of course, I would have mentioned things like Google Classroom and stuff as one of the good options, but there are many options that are out there. So it would be important for this forum to, I guess, speak into that as well.
Thanks, Dion. The education sector is definitely one that that we have a priority, and I just want to get a sense from the participants if anyone else feels strongly about a focused session dealing with education, technology, and connectivity in the current environment. That's either by showing hands or posting it in the chat. But it's definitely something that I would be interested in providing a dedicated forum for. So let me get an indication. Yep. Okay. Definitely interested. Okay, we'll do that. Part of what we have to look at, and I'm mindful of the time, we have 5 more minutes for the QA before Brent comes on, is we have to make decisions around if this is going to be weekly dealing with the technical issue, and then we create separate audience-specific or industry-specific interventions for sectors like education, like government offices that are dealing with peculiar circumstances as a result of the pandemic. So we'll put the education sector on. Thank you, Dion. I see comments from Marlon Ragunanan online. How on the chat? How do you quickly move antiquated processes to a more streamlined remote mode? Brent, is this something you're going to be addressing in your segment? Okay, great. And Darren Doris says Cyber Safe TT is already doing a lot in this area. So if you'd like to have a chat on this, I'd be happy to be part of the discussion. Definitely we'll take that offer up. And the idea here is not that the initiating team does all the work, but the community speaks to the community. That's really what we're going for. So if there are persons who are already developing or have developed education content that looks specifically at remote classes, facilitating exams and interactions between teachers and students, then definitely that's something that this forum can be used to bring greater light to across the region. All right. Any other questions?
I just have a comment, an observation, and it's jumping off of Dion's comments as well. Good morning, everyone. And this is Ria Yaching. When we talk about remote work, I think, certainly from my own experience in so-called homeschooling 2 children online, as well as trying to remote work as well, there is a sense that that is a direct transference of what is happening in the school or what is happening in the office to the virtual environment. And what inevitably happened over the last month or so is a rude awakening that not everything can be transferred into a virtual environment easily for infrastructure reasons, but just simply in the area of just conducting business or conducting school. And so over the last month, my experience has been there's actually a scaling back of some of the online activity to some of the more pressing, some of the areas that can be transferred online, and certainly more face-to-face interaction as opposed to video-based canned learning or canned messages, which of course in a real world environment you would have more two-way interaction. So it's just trying to figure out how to prioritize those interactions online and scaling the infrastructure in that sort of strategic way to get everyone on the same page, so to speak, and getting everyone in a highly productive environment in spite of the context.
Very good. Thanks, Ria. The next, any last question? We could take one more feedback or comment before we move on to Brent. All right, so next up we have Brent McIntosh, and Brent is going to deal with the how-to component of this webinar, and he's going to be looking at building out my remote access toolkit. Now, this presentation is supposed to give us practical recommendations for creating a robust and scalable remote access toolkit. That includes VPN applications, virtual desktop options, and some security considerations. So very happy to hand you over to Brent McIntosh, and he'll take us through the next presentation, how to build my remote access toolkit. Brent?
Thank you, Bevel, and your family, CaribNOGers, and the rest of the community out there. So, Steve, you really set a really good backdrop from what I'm going to discuss today. And I think I'm just going to warn you, I had my priorities sort of miscued because I pretty much got set up for talking about critical network infrastructure and IXPs. But What I'm going to do though, I'm going to just share some on the remote access technologies and how we can go about getting it done. So first off, in the past, big companies, enterprise businesses would really ask their service providers, can you guarantee me 99.999% uptime? Would if there's a failure, would you be able to actually, carry my traffic through to the internet, right? And now these are questions that the ordinary basic user should ask, because with the whole work from home scenarios, and that may never even change going forward, remote workers, virtual workers, teleworkers, having high available internet access will always be important to them, just as the major businesses. And I want to give, before I go into the details, I just want to give a couple scenarios. One day last week, a provider in the Caribbean had a power outage. Now, granted, normally power outages affect home users. That power outage also affected the provider themselves. And what infrastructure that really stood up, and that infrastructure was the IXP. While the provider had some issues serving content to the internet, the IXP was actually there serving traffic to those end users. And that was a big, big testament to why these infrastructures are important. And while I would talk about this maybe in one of the other webinar series, maybe next week, or if I have some time after this one, I'll share some details. Let me get back to the whole remote access and virtual access working from home. Now, first thing that's required is an internet connection. And by now, we're hoping most of the providers will put in plans in place to help extend their reach to users who doesn't even have that kind of access. So that's the first thing you require. Once you have procured that internet access, you would need a VPN client. Now, there are different types of VPN clients. All right, there are software-based ones. There are hardware-based clients, right? That would give you access to your office. I don't want to single out any vendors here, but there's some vendors that actually make this pretty simple. Just to name a few, you have your Fortinets, your Palo Altos, your Ciscos, your Junipers. Now, the ordinary home user, and no longer would I like to call you ordinary, because at the end of the day, COVID-19 is what is actually going to start your digital transformation, if that hasn't been done yet. It makes sense actually doing research, right? So use your internet wisely. Research on what works best for you. And I'm talking from a practical experience. As we have some home users, right, that actually would go out there, buy what we call small office, home office, VPN clients or VPN devices that are pretty much plug and play. And I'll be happy to make a list of those that I can share with the CaribNOG team, who would actually, get us out to you. And they are what we call the remote work tech users, who would get hardware devices that can build what we call secure tunnels into your office. Now, let me just see if I can share my screen and give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so hopefully you're all seeing my screen.
Not yet, Brent.
Okay, great. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to log into one of my.
Not seeing your screen.
You're not seeing that screen? Okay, nope. Just 1 second. Okay, how is that now?
Yep, seeing it. Thank you.
That's much better? Okay.
Now we're seeing the matrix.
Okay, guys, you're definitely seeing that screen now.
Yeah, we're seeing your matrix screen.
Okay. Okay, guys. All right, so what I was going to share with you, it looks like my screen is all bogged up there, but what I'm going to share with you was I already have what I call a permanent IPsec side-to-side tunnel built to my current office. So from home, I have built an IPsec tunnel, an IPsec from the standpoint of it's secured with encryption for transferring what I call my critical data between the critical data that I access from my servers at my office. So this also works on my mobile phone, so I can have that access from my mobile phone, pretty much any handheld device that I have. That I run what I call different encryption standards to pretty much make the encryption more secure. Of course, one thing you have to understand is that not because you're running something that's IPsec doesn't mean it can't be hacked into, right? There are other what we call maybe vulnerabilities that may exist, if that is not properly done. So just to recap, okay, and I'm sorry I couldn't give you a presentation on this, but just to recap, you need a good internet connection. I would say today minimum 20 megs down. Good internet connection, then you get a VPN client, all right, or a VPN device that will support terminating of that tunnel, and that one sits at your main office. The VPN client sits at your remote location or on your mobile phone. You build out that tunnel, and you have what you call secure access into your corporate services. So with that, I want to take the time, Bevel and team here, to share a little bit on critical infrastructure and just give a few examples. So hopefully this works well this time. Okay, are you seeing that?
Yes, we are. We're seeing your presentation view. But that's fine.
Okay, great.
Keep going.
Okay, great. Okay, so so I want to talk a little bit about critical infrastructure pairing, and I would just leave this after for you could ask questions as it relates to this. Now, as I mentioned before, right, the importance of having critical infrastructure is not just important for when there are these type of situations, or when there's like this current situation with COVID-19, but also for general best quality access for remote users and broadband customers. And I want to share a little bit on the Grenada Internet Exchange. As we notice here, you can see that a provider list that actually connects on the Internet Exchange. And to be fair to the entire party out there, an Internet Exchange, or IXV as we know it, is a common connectivity fabric whereby content providers, ISPs, can connect together so they can share their local content, their traffic between end users and other providers without traversing IP transit links or through the rest of the world. In the case of Grenada, we have about 4 or 5 providers, some CDNs, and very important CDNs, as we saw last week. Usage to our DNS root servers, usage to our time servers has been more prominent now with COVID-19, and users have been accessing these content, at a more regular basis. We have seen a change in traffic trends. In the past, when we looked at what we call popular content, after Google, Netflix was the top CDN that was used. With the advent of COVID-19, that changed. Netflix usage went down. Facebook usage went up. I can't show you the specific details here, but what I will show you is just to give you an idea of the traffic trends. We have seen a general increase of traffic being pulled from the IXV. That being critical traffic served by Akamai and critical secure web traffic served by Cloudflare. What was good to notice as well, there were providers that were calling to say, hey guys, we have a 1 gig connection to the Internet Exchange. Can we get this upgraded to 10 gigs? We got questions like, fine, we already have a single connection that's IPv4. Can we get a connection now where we can do IPv6 dual stack? And And that was good news. And what that led to is the fact that, you know, providers really wanted to have the opportunity to ensure they have that connectivity into, you know, into that critical infrastructure. We've seen initiatives now by the Caribbean Telecom Union, CTU, and their teams reaching out to IXPs in the region. I think it's 12 plus IXPs, trying to help development by placing things like additional DNS Anycast root server mirrors, right? And these are root servers that would give you secure, very secure and you know, quick round trip time responses. Okay, so you know, that's it on the IXP side of things. I know Bevel had mentioned, you know, using, you know, newer and diverse technologies and IPv6. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak on that today. I'll be happy to speak on it for 2 minutes or on further on our next.
We'll be drilling into that in next week's webinar, Brent.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we just wanted to intro.
Okay, great. So that's it from me. If you know, any questions, and if any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Even I can talk about this whole day, but you know, I really would like to get some feedback from you. And if there are any questions I didn't specifically address, especially on the remote VPN setup, and I'm also going to build a practical guide to setting up remote VPNs. It's going to be vendor agnostic, so it'll give you the general principles and guidelines that you would need to use to get a remote access VPN to your corporate office, to the cloud. So that will assist you in getting that set up, you know, in short order.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Brent. And Brent touched on a number of topics that we'll be drilling into in greater detail. I hope everyone took note of the role that the local internet exchange point is playing in alleviating some of the pressure on bandwidth and local applications in Grenada. It's an example that we will be putting a greater spotlight on in some of the upcoming sessions. So let's get some questions from the team.
Bevel, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
Bevel Paul Stanley here. Question for Brent. In this new way of working, are we seeing organizations looking to go full cloud solutions, or are there still the need for hybrid cloud?
Hi, Paul. Great. Thanks for your question. Awesome question, right? So, and I'm going to define organizations, and I'm going to split organizations in two. Well, we have providers and enterprise. And, you know, on the enterprise, you'll have, you know, small and medium businesses fall in there. What we have noticed, you know, since the start of COVID-19, end users have been looking at cloud services maybe months or years before. Some were prepared, some were not. But those who were not prepared, they still made the attempt, and the majority of them moved some of their workloads into the cloud. And having discussions and, you know, technical discussions with some of these entities, you know, one of the questions I asked, are you going to go full cloud? And that's a great question you asked, right? Because that's the same thing I asked. Are you going to go full cloud, or are you going to still have your private micro data center, your private service being, you know, located locally? And the answer was, what would make sense for us to move to cloud? We would absolutely move to cloud. But for some customers, not everything they can. So to answer that question on the side of the enterprises, their strategy is to move critical workloads that needs to be always available. They're going to definitely migrate that to the cloud. But for some time, they're going to keep some local form of hosting for these applications. The challenge, I think, for a lot of these operators / entities was actually having what we call the correct platforms, the correct hyperconvergence platforms to sort of have that multi-cloud you know, solution, right? So I think what we're going to be seeing after, we're going to see providers, customers, large entities, enterprises moving to infrastructure. That's what we call HCI infrastructure, hyper-convergent infrastructures that would support these multi-cloud deployment scenarios. I hope that answers your question.
Well,
Yes, thanks.
okay, thanks, Paul and Brent. I wanted to actually just add to that and connect it back to the VPN and so on. If Brent, in a case of say a GREX and having the IXP as a local point of convergence and so on, well, one, do we see the possibility of having some kind of cloud-like infrastructure at the IX, but people still, well, not at the IX, but at, let's say, a data center connected to the IX, and people still operating securely from, connecting that to the home office or connecting that from home users. I guess I'm questioning, how are people, even if we're able to do hyper-converged infrastructure, how are people connecting to that? Are they going over the public cloud infrastructure, or are people connecting using using some kind of VPN or remote access mechanisms?
Hey, Stephen, and just to add to that, from my experience with the connectivity types, we've seen certain vendors using providers like AWS and Microsoft Azure, and actually deploying virtual gateways for secure connect. So in other words, they would have virtual firewalls deployed with these cloud providers that they will build a tunnel to from their local network to connect. So not just connecting to the cloud, but secure connection to the cloud.
Okay. I actually had an interesting question for you, and I think there's a question from Ikeshi Griffith who we'll get to next. I had a question for Brent. In terms of the VPN types, you had mentioned IPsec VPN, but there were in our checklist of internet connection, VPN device, VPN client, and so on. You had mentioned that people go and buy small office, home office type VPN appliances. I know those would tend to have OpenVPN as a protocol that's implemented. Do you have any specific recommendations or guidance if an organization wants to go and get secure access, right? The kinds of considerations or products, because you mentioned IPsec. I think we had some conversation in the chat that said IPsec might be a bit challenging for some. So where do we stand IPsec, OpenVPN, or just do I buy a Netgear and it will magically work?
Yeah, and Steve, that's a really good point, because I can't tell you how many users at home would be power users that can manipulate setting up an open VPN or a generic IPsec VPN connection. But plug and play, I would say, for the average user would make sense. So buying a device that would pretty much automatically terminate the VPN connection with you just checkboxing a few checkboxes, ticking a few checkboxes, that would probably be the way to go. I think it would be great to probably set up a list, which we can probably put our heads up together on building a list of what we would recommend maybe for, non-power users, power users, in terms of getting that set up. But I would always recommend using a solution that has been tried and tested and that has support for, and when I say support, it's recommended by a lot of the larger vendors out there. And a lot of lightweight clients that actually, that support, that. So it's something maybe we can try to maybe itemize.
Let's take Ikechi's question. He said, this is Ikechi Griffith. You mentioned some of the benefits of IXPs aren't being leveraged by businesses. What are some of those benefits? And do you have any advice on advocacy to businesses so that we can all receive those benefits?
Right. So I think this is a really great question that would take maybe an hour's worth of discussion, but let me give you an idea of what businesses can benefit from, right? Currently, today, and most of the Caribbean IXPs, who connects? The providers. And the providers in turn actually allows connectivity for their customers' networks into the IXP. Now, what can the businesses benefit from? The businesses can benefit from a few things, right? DNS any recast updates and responses, real-time connectivity to time servers, real-time connectivity to secure web content, SSL content hosted by vendors like, I'll take for example Grenada, like Cloudflare, and what we call mission critical content and information stored from Akamai, for example, Android updates, Apple iOS updates, and in some cases, video games updates, right? But I'll tell you something. What is the difference here? The difference here is the connectivity. Enterprise businesses most times depends on their providers to connect them and allow their networks. But are you guaranteed that that's going to happen? Maybe, maybe not. What providers need to do, and the way they can benefit, is to apply for their own internet resources and pair directly with the IXP. And that is for another discussion I believe Bevel would have set up in the upcoming weeks. We'll look at, autonomy, internet connectivity autonomy, and using your resources to get direct connectivity for your benefit. So I will leave this one. I'll leave that one here. I'll park it for now, but I'm really looking forward to doing a deep dive with you on this one very soon.
Thanks, Brent. I'm just checking the chat to see if there are any things. I think Albert has a comment or question. Albert?
Yes, thank you very much, Bevel. Albert Daniels, ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. I'm looking forward in future sessions in drilling down to issues, technical issues related to, IMRS, the root servers, IPv6, and so on. But my comment, is a sort of interesting, ironic one. I mean, many of you would have known that, I travel almost every other week, to some kind of meeting. But the reality is that operationally, I've been a remote worker for the last 6 years. And there's one very important point, that I've learned, over time that I wanted to just share with the group. I mean, we have an office in Los Angeles that I've been to 3 times in 6 years, but as a regional team, weekly, we pay very important attention to the personal and individual aspect of things. And what has been happening now with COVID is our CEO has started a weekly call with all 350 ICANN employees, which is a softer kind of a call, maintaining contact, maintaining the human aspect of it. We are told we can bring our dogs, we can bring our cats, we can bring our kids, our goldfish on the call, because there's a realization that now that more people are working remotely, it's important to keep that personal connection and to give, staff who are working remotely the reassurances that everything is okay, and also to take time for family. So the reality is different. I mean, I used to have this VPN at home working fine. And then, a couple of weeks ago, my son shows up at the house with a computer. He works at an investment bank and he says, Daddy, I need access to the network because I have to connect my bank's VPN. So all of a sudden, issues of segmenting the network, prioritizing my traffic, and from a technical standpoint, continuing to operate the way that they used to. So I think it's important that we not forget that there is an important human aspect in everything that's happening right now. Thanks, Bevel.
Albert, I think actually that's a fantastic point and an excellent way for us to kind of close off the QA session. I was waiting for someone to put the human dimension into the remote work toolkit. How many on this call could say that you feel now in this over the last 2-3 weeks that you've had more work to do and spent more time online than ever before, right? And I could put both hands up as well too. And this is from a group that has already been intensely working. So when a team like this starts speaking about having the not just the perception but the reality of an even more intensive work experience, you start to understand that these human and social components are as important as the VPN and the security and the new router configurations to sustaining what may well be the new normal. And this is something that I think we have to keep in mind when we start looking at what are some of the issues from a technical and policy standpoint that go alongside the operational dynamics of remote work. We have to keep in mind that human beings are the one behind and in front of the computers, and they need to maintain, or they need to find a new balance. Now that's going to be different for each one of us and our organizations, depending on the structure and nature of the activities we're being asked to do. But it is a consistent priority across all industries, and is one that I think should be very much part of the toolkit that we're considering. Specific strategies for ensuring that there is not burnout, frustration, or any kind of dysfunctionality as a result of the more intense operations. And different factors have been raised in different fora about why people will now ping bosses more. People want to maintain a sense of order and predictability to their routine, having had the traumatic disruption of being removed from their offices and workplaces, et cetera, et cetera. And so finding ways to keep that human component front and center of the remote work experience, I think is a consideration of all responsible network administrators in this season. And I'm saying that not just for our staff and team members and employees, but for us as well as individuals, so that we also maintain a healthy balance. I have a question for the community. Again, you can indicate either by raising your hands or saying in the chat. Are you comfortable with this 1 hour format and the 2 presentation QA format? Is this something that we can look forward to on a weekly basis? I just want to get a sense of if we got the timing and balance of the meeting right. Very good. I'm seeing some yeses coming up. Cool with me, makes sense. All right, so let me just repeat what I said at the start for those who might have come in late. The plan is to do this weekly. Segment A will be a type of feature address, a very short overview of the subject. And segment B, the presentation, will be a drilling into hands-on, more technical component. Now we have several options for our second webinar next week, ranging from further details into the security and tools used for remote work to what Brent touched on today, a look at local traffic exchange in a COVID context, the importance of local bandwidth and serving up local applications to now locked down local audiences. What is the preference of the team? You can tell me now in the chat or by hands, or you can continue to share that online on the CaribNOG discussion list or in the WhatsApp group that is available. Instructions will be put in the chat for how to join the WhatsApp, the online WhatsApp group, and we have feedback on things. I see Jerry George's only concern is the time slot. This was actually supposed to be a Friday weekly session from 2 to 3 p.m. So my other question to you all is, would you prefer that we move it to its origin? The only reason we're not doing it tomorrow is Good Friday, and several persons said that they would have plans for Good Friday. I think people are having some stay-at-home Good Friday hot cross bun type interaction. So what is the preference for the group here? And you'll be speaking on behalf of the CaribNOG community. Do you prefer the Fridays and the afternoon session, or Fridays and a morning session? The afternoon session would be 2 to 3. The morning sessions will continue to be 10 to 11. All right, so we see some polls coming. Friday PM, Thursday good, Thursday good. So keep the comments going in the chat. At the end, the administrator will take it and poll it, and we will we'll let you know what the consensus is on the time. But it seems that that Friday morning seems to be trending in the chat. Any last comments? As I said, this is a collaboration between ARIN, CaribNOG, and the IORGs operating in the region, LACNIC, ICANN, ISOC. We have Albert here from ICANN. Shunan was tied up in another webinar on a similar topic with a different audience, and we're expecting the team LACNIC. Kevin is actually on as well, Friday mornings. He says it's his preference. Kevin, can I get a quick comment from you before we bring the webinar to a close?
Hi, thanks, Pavel, and good morning to everyone. Good morning to all the CaribNOGers and for folks who are participating in the CaribNOG session for the first time. As those who already are familiar, you know that once you are in the CaribNOG session, you are a CaribNOGer, and you will be a CaribNOGer for life. So I'm just very glad to see this first instance coming together very smoothly with so many interests from across the region. I think that it's based on the feedback, and I've been just looking at the chat to say, interestingly enough, I think it's probably local to me, but this week there's probably increased demands in my neighborhood for bandwidth. So I've been having a couple of issues with having my video on. But I do think that this is exactly the new normal. This is the way that we have to continue functioning. I think the tidbits of information that we are addressing are actually quite timely for our Caribbean audiences. From a personal standpoint, I'd love to hear at some point something dedicated to security and other tools. And I made a comment very late on after Stephen's presentation, looking at what will be some of the workarounds to not just administrative type activities, but what you would call authentication points along business processes. So contract formation is what I had as the example. And I'm talking about going beyond just like a scan and sign scenario. You know, for instance, when you do particular business processes, you're required to go in person, show 2 forms of ID and sign in front of a representative. And I'm thinking in general, a lot of our industries may not have been as prepared as they should have for this COVID-19 workaround, this form of online working and remote engagement. So that's just like a personal interest I would like to see a bit more discussion on. So it's tied on to the security and other tools, but it's specific to authentication along business lines for immediate midterm needs. And yeah, from LACNIC's standpoint, we are pleased and we are very glad to be here. Part of the coordination of planning, for the folks who are not aware, is my colleague Alejandro Costa, who in the LACNIC region is known as Dr. IPv6. Alejandro has been doing a lot of research in some of the more, I would say, the more secure, more technical issues dealing with routing security over IPv6, which I think will be something that will be a lot of interest here to this group. And we are happy to providing support, speaking at when required. We are just happy to be here in general. So thanks very much. I'm looking forward to next week. I'm putting it out there. I'm hoping it's Friday morning next week, Friday session.
Right, we're going to take a look at all of the requests per morning versus afternoon and share something. So I want to encourage you all, please continue to be safe and practice your social distancing. Check the CaribNOG.org website for updates on the schedule and timetable for the next set of meetings, and for a note on if you're going to expand it to other sectors like education, and also check out the Team ARIN.net website for updates as we go along. Very, very good to see you all, and very good to have this this inaugural webinar series kicked off today. Look forward to meeting and seeing you all next week. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great week and weekend. Bye.